Good morning, class 7. Today we will continue with the chapter 8 of your history book, Devotional Paths to the Divine. In the previous classes, we have talked about the Supreme God. We all believe in God. For things which go wrong, sometimes we even blame God for it. And if things goes according to our whims and choices, we thank our God, right? So there is a belief that there is a supreme power which is guiding us, which is having a control over our activities. So that is what we have discussed in the previous classes. Then we have discussed about the Hindu saints who have propagated the Bhakti movement, and there were the Muslim saints or Sufis who have started the Sufi movement. We have talked about Nayanars and Alvars in Bhakti movement. Nayanars were the ones who believed in or who were devotees of Lord Shiva, whereas Alvars were devotees of Lord Vishnu, right? And people of untouchable class were also allowed to be a part of these groups. Then we have talked about the philosophy which is there in Bhakti. We have discussed about Ramanuja, who was a Bhakti saint from Tamil Nadu. He was there in 11th century. He was very much influenced by the ideas of Alvars, and he said that according to him, the best mean of attaining salvation, that is freedom from life and death, is through intense devotion to Vishnu. So he propagated this message that if people want to attain salvation, what they can do is they can show their devotion to Lord Vishnu, and with his grace the devotees will attain bliss of union with him. That is, he will be free, his soul will be free from the this birth and rebirth cycle, right? Then we have talked about Veerashaivism of Baswana. The Veerashaivis argued they strongly propagated for equality of all human beings. So they were very much against the Brahminical ideas, which propagated that there are people who are untouchable, or who propagated the idol worship. But then Veerashaivism were against the idol worship. So this much we have talked about. Then we will start with the saints of Maharashtra today. From the 13th to the 17th centuries, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets whose songs in simple Marathi continue to inspire people. The most important among them were Dhaneshwar, or popularly he is known as Gyaneshwar, Namdev, Eknath and Tukaram, as well as women like Sakhubai and family of Chokhla Mela, when belongs to the untouchable caste, that is Mahar. The regional tradition of Bhakti focused on the Vitthal, or a form of Vitthal is again of incarnation of Lord Vishnu, temple in Pandharpur, as well as on the notion of a personal God residing in the hearts of people. These saints poet rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of piety and social difference based on birth. So they were against the rituals which are practiced. Then they were not at all in favor of the social differences which existed in the society, and it was on the basis of birth. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families. So they said that if just renouncing the world or leaving the worldly life, that was also rejected by them. They said that person can be a devotee even if he is living or she is living in a family, earning the livelihood, taking care of their family. So a new humanist idea emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. As the famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehta said, they are Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others. So according to them, Vaishnavas are the people who understand or are compassionate towards others' pain. Then this is a sort of questioning which was done, written in Marathi. This is an Abhang, Marathi devotional hymn of Saint Tukaram. He who identifies with the battered and the beaten, mark him as a saint, for God is with him. So he is saying that one person who is identifying, who is like being compassionate towards a person who is like not treated well in the society, so he should be marked as a saint. The reason why he should be marked as a saint is because he is supported by God. God is with him. He holds every forsaken man close to his heart. He treats a slave as his own son. Says Tuka, I won't be tired to repeat again, such a man is God in person. So he says that a person who is treating his slave as his own son, he should be respected in the society. And he is saying that he is like maybe he should be treated as if God has himself come on the earth. Here is an abhang composed by Chokla Mela's son. You made us low caste. Why don't you face that fact? Great Lord, our whole life, leftover food to eat. You should be ashamed of this. So here he is right in a way questioning God, and he is saying that you have given us birth as a low caste. So why don't you? He's talking to God and he is saying that why don't you come and face this yourself? He's saying that our whole life what we are doing is we are eating the food which is left over. So for this he's accusing God and he's saying that God should be feeling bad about it. You have eaten in our home. How can you deny it? Chokla's son Karamela asked, why did you give me life? So he's saying that God, you have yourself eaten food at our place. So you cannot deny this fact. And he says that this is Chokla Mela's son, Chokha, and he is saying that then for this life, why did you give birth to us? Then Nathpanthis, Siddh and Yogis. A number of religious groups that emerged during this period criticized the ritual and other aspects of conventional religion and social order. So they were against the rituals, first thing, then other aspects of conventional religion, that is like what was followed by the society, the social order, using simple logical argument. They criticized it and they gave their some logic for it. Among them were the Nathpanthis, Siddhacharis and Yogis. They advocated renunciation of the world. They were in favor of that the world should be renounced, we should leave the worldly life. To them, the path to salvation lay in meditation on the formless ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. So, for them, they advocated that the world should be left. To attain salvation, the best way is to meditate. A person should think about the God, and they said that God has no form. He is a formless reality. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practices like yogasana. For this, he said that intense training was required, and that can be done through through the yogasanas, for which is for mind and for the breathing practices. These groups became particularly popular among low caste. Their criticism of conventional religion created the ground for devotional religion to become a popular force in northern India. So he advocated that he was against the conventional religion, that the practices which were there. So obviously it attracted the people of low caste, because till now they have been facing the dislike or the criticism. So they found it very attractive. Then Islam and Sufism. The saints had much in common with Sufis, so much so that it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. They were influenced by each other, and many ideas they were adopted by them. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion towards all fellow human beings. Islam propagated strict monotheism. Mono means one, so they believed in one God, submission to one God. In the 8th and 9th centuries, religious scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, that is Shariat. They follow Sharia and theology of Islam. While the religion of Islam gradually became more complex, Sufis provided it with an additional dimension that favored a more personal devotion to God. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. So they also rejected the behavior which was propagated by the Muslim scholars. They sought union with God much as a lover seeks his beloved with disregard for the world. Like the saint poet, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings. So the way saints have propagated, composed poems, same way Sufis also composed poems, and they have expressed their feelings and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes and fables developed around them. Among the great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazali, Rumi, and Sadi. Like the Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis, the Sufi believed that the heart can be trained to look at the world in a different way. They developed elaborate method of training using zikr, that is chanting of a name or sacred formula, contemplation, sama, that is singing, rags is dancing, and discussion of parables, breath control, etc., under the guidance of a master who was known as or a peer. Thus emerged the silsila as a spiritually genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method, that is tariqa, of instruction and ritual practice. Okay. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onwards. This process was strengthened with the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate. When several major Sufi centers developed all over the subcontinent, the Chishti Silsila was among the most influential orders. It had a long line of teachers like Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi, and Banda Nawaz Gisaduraz of Gulbarga. The Sufi masters held their assemblies in their khanqahs or hospices. Devotees of all descriptions, including members of the royalty and nobility and ordinary people, flocked these khanqahs. They discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessings of the saint in solving their worldly problems, or simply attending the music and dance session. So it was not only for the royal people, common people as well as the royal people could attend it. They went there for the blessings of the saints. Sometimes they just attended the music and the dance session. Often people attributed Sufi masters with miraculous power that could relieve others of their illness and troubles. The tomb or dargah of Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of all faiths thronged. So where there were tombs are, that those places have become the religious places, and now like people of all the religion will visit these religious places. Jalaluddin Rumi was a great 13th century Sufi poet from Iran who wrote in Persian. Here is an excerpt from his work. He was not on the cross of the Christians. I went to the Hindu temples, and none of them was there any sign. He was not on the heights or in the lowlands. I went to the Kaaba of Mecca. He was not there. I asked about him from Avikarna, the philosopher. He was beyond the range of Avicenna. I looked into my heart. In that place, his place, I saw him. He was in no other place. So he said that he has, according to him, the God is in our heart, and he is not at all at any other place. New religious development in the North India. The period after the 13th century saw a new wave of the Bhakti movement in North India. This was an age with Islam, Brahminical Hinduism, Sufism, various strands of Bhakti, and the Nathpanths, Siddhas, and Yogis influenced one another. We saw that new towns, chapter 6, and kingdoms, chapter 2, 3, and 4, were emerging, and people were taking up new professions and finding new roles for themselves. Such people, especially craftspersons, peasants, traders, and laborers, thronged to listen to these new saints and spread their ideas. Some of them, like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak, rejected all orthodox religions. Others, like Tulsidas and Surdas, accepted existing beliefs and practices but wanted to make these accessible to all. Tulsidas conceived of God in the form of Ram. Tulsidas' composition, the Ramcharitmanas, written in Avadhi, is a language used in eastern Uttar Pradesh, is important both as an expression of his devotion as a literary work. Surdas was an ardent devotee of Krishna. His composition compiled in Sursagar, Sursaravali, and Sahitya Lahari expresses his devotion. Also contemporary was Shankar Dev of Assam, who emphasized devotion to Vishnu and composed poems and plays in Assamese. He began the practice of setting up namgars or house of recitation and prayer, a practice that continues to date. So, Tulsidas worshipped Lord Ram and he has compiled Ramcharitmanas. But then they were also, they accepted the religion which was there, but then they believed that it should be accessible for all the people, not to any particular like religion or caste. This tradition also included saints like Dadu Dayal, Ravi Das, and Mirabai. Mirabai was a Rajput princess married into the royal family of Mewar in the 16th century. Mirabai became a disciple of Ravi Das, a saint from a caste considered untouchable. She was devoted to Krishna and composed innumerable bhajans expressing her intense devotion. Her songs only also openly challenged the norms of the upper caste and became popular with the masses in Rajasthan and Gujarat. So she became a disciple of a person who was considered as untouchable, Swami Ravidas. A unique feature of most of the saints is that their work were composed in regional languages and could be sung. They became immensely popular and were handed down orally from generation to generation. Usually, the poorest, most deprived communities and women transmitted these songs, often adding their own experiences. Thus, the songs as we have them today are as much a creation of the saints as of generation of people who sang them. They have become a part of our living popular culture. So they have inherited. Then gradually people made certain changes in those songs. The essence of Shankar Deva's devotion came to be known as Ekasaranam Dharma. That means supreme surrender to the One. The teaching of Shankar Deva were based on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Puran. He also encouraged the establishment of satra or monasteries for transmission of knowledge. His major composition included Kirtan Ghosh. An important contribution of Bhakti saint was towards the development of music. Jayadev of Bengal composed the Geet Govind in Sanskrit. Each song composed in a particular rag and tal. A sufficient impact that these saints had on music was the use of bhajan, kirtan, and abhang. These sounds, which emphasized on emotional experience, had a tremendous appeal to the common people. So the songs had too much appeal, like the people were very much influenced by these songs. Beyond the Rana's Palace. This is a song composed by Mirabai. Ranaji, I have left your norms of shame and false decorum of the princely life. I have left your town, and yet, Rana, why have you kept up enmity against me? Rana, you gave me a cup of poison. I drank it laughing. Rana, I will not be destroyed by you, and yet, Rana, why have you kept up enmity against me? So this is a like song which was composed by Mirabai, and this is like she is like asking her husband that when she has left his palace why has he kept his why is he angry, why is he having enmity against her. She has drank the cup of poison which he had offered her, but then she says that she will not be killed or not be getting any harm from him, because she's saying that she has already left his palace. Then why he is having enmity against him, sorry, against her. Kabir, who probably lived in the 15th 16th centuries, was one of the most influential saints. He was brought up in a family of Muslim Julahas or weavers settled in or near the city of Banaras. We have little reliable information about his life. We get to know of his ideas from a vast collection of verses called Sakhis and Pads, said to have been composed by him, sung by him by wandering bhajan singers. Some of these were later collected and preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib, Panchwani and Bijak. In search of true Lord. O Allah, Ram, present in all living beings, have mercy on your servants, O Lord. Why bump your head on the ground? Why bathe your body in water? You kill and you call yourself humble, but your vices you conceal. So he is talking to both the people who are for Hindus as well as Muslims, and he is saying, he's talking to God, that God should have mercy on his followers. Then he is saying that people, they put their head down on the ground. Then there are people who take bath and feel in the taking bath in the water and feel that they have washed away their vices. Then he is saying that when people are killing, then how can they call themselves as humble? 24 times the Brahmin keeps the Ekadasis fast. He is saying that the Brahmins, they keep fast 24 times, while the Qazi observes the Ramzan. Tell me, why does he set aside the 11 months? Why those 11 months are left? To seek a spiritual fruit in the 12th? Hari dwells in the east, they say, and Allah resides in the west. Search for him in your heart, in the heart of your heart. There he dwells, Rahim Ram. So he says that God is believed that he lives in the east, whereas Allah resides in the west. But then he is saying that look into your heart and you will find both Ram as well as Rahim. Kabir's teachings were based on a complete, indeed vehement, rejection of the major religious traditions. His teachings openly ridiculed all forms of external worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, the preeminence of the priestly classes and the caste system. The language of his poetry was a form of spoken Hindi widely understood by ordinary people. He also sometimes used cryptic language which is difficult to follow. So most of the time the language which he used was a spoken Hindi which was spoken that time. Sometimes his language was a little difficult to understand. Kabir believed in the formless supreme God and preached that the only path to salvation was through bhakti or devotion. Kabir drew his followers from among both Hindus and Muslims. So he said that only devotion or bhakti can help a person to attain, come near to God. Baba Guru Nanak. We know about Guru Nanak, he from 1469 to 1539. Then about Kabir, born at Talwandi, that is Nankana Sahib in Pakistan. He travelled widely before establishing a centre at Kartarpur, Dera Baba Nanak or the river Ravi. A regular worship that consisted of the singing of his own hymns was established there for his followers, irrespective of their former creed, caste, or gender. His followers ate together in common kitchen, that is langar. The sacred space thus created by Baba Guru Nanak was known as Dharmsal. It is now known as Gurudwara. Okay, one thing I would like to tell you about Kabir. It is believed that he was born to a Hindu widow, and because of the society's fear of disgrace, she left the child. Now, how much truth is there, we are not very sure, but it is believed that there is a story like this. Before his death in 1539, Baba Guru Nanak appointed one of his followers as his successor. His name was Lehna, but he came to be known as Guru Angad, signifying that he was part of Guru Nanak himself. Guru Angad compiled the compositions of Guru Nanak, to which he added his own in a new script known as Gurumukhi. The three successors of Guru Angad also wrote under the name of Nanak, and all of their compositions were compiled by Guru Arjan in 1604. To this compilation were added the writings of other figures like Sheikh Farid, Sant Kabir, Bhagavad Namdev, and Guru Tej Bahadur. In 1706, this compilation was authenticated by Guru Tej Bahadur's son and successor Guru Gobind Singh. It is now known as Guru Granth Sahib, the holy scriptures of the Sikhs. The number of Baba Guru Nanak's followers increased through the 16th century under his successor. They belonged to a number of castes but traders, agriculturists, artisans, craftspersons are predominated. This may have something to do with Baba Guru Nanak's insistence that his followers must be householders and should adopt productive and useful occupations. They were also expected to contribute to the general funds of the community of followers. So he said that his followers can be householders who can have a family, and they were expected to contribute to the fund. By the beginning of 17th century, the town of Daspur, that is Amritsar, had developed around the central Gurudwara called Harmandir Sahib, Golden Temple. It was virtually self-governing, and modern historians refer to the early 17th century Sikh community as a state within the state. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir looked upon them as a potential threat, and he ordered the execution of Guru Arjan in 1606. The Sikh movement began to get politicized in the 17th century, a development which culminated in the institution of the Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. The community of the Sikh, called the Khalsa Panth, became a political entity. So the Mughal ruler Jahangir, he felt that he could have a threat from the these people who are coming up under one guru. So he took action against them, and gradually they formed a institution called Khalsa, which was set up by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. The changing historical situation during the 16th and 17th centuries influenced the development of the Sikh movement. The ideas of Baba Guru Nanak had a huge impact on this development from the very beginning. He emphasized the importance of the worship of one God. He insisted that caste, creed, or gender was irrelevant for attaining liberation. His ideas of liberation was not that of a state of inert bliss, but rather the pursuit of active life with a strong sense of social commitment. He himself used the term Naam, Dan, and Insan for the essence of his teaching, which actually meant right worship, welfare of others, and purity of conduct. His teachings are now remembered as Naam Japna, Kirt Karna, and Vand Chakna, which are also underline the importance of right belief and worship, honest living, and helping others. Thus, Baba Guru Nanak's ideas of equality had social and political implications. This might partly explain the difference between the history of the followers of Baba Guru Nanak and the history of followers of other religious figures of medieval centuries, like Kabir, Ravidas, and Dadu, whose ideas were very similar to those of Baba Guru Nanak. Martin Luther and the Reformation. The 16th century was at a time of religious ferment in Europe as well. One of the most important leaders of the changes that took place within Christianity was Martin Luther. Luther felt that several practices in Roman Catholic Church went against the teachings of Bible. He encouraged the use of the language of ordinary people rather than Latin, and translated the Bible into German. Luther was strongly opposed to the practice of indulgences or making donation to the church so as to gain forgiveness from sins. His writings were widely disseminated with the growing use of printing press. Many Protestant Christian sects trace their origin to the teaching of Luther. So he was very much against that people who did sin, and they thought that once they will donate money to the church, their sins will be like they will be forgiven. So and he has like written, he believed that teachings should be given in the language of people, that is the language which common people use. So that is all for today, class. Take care of yourselves. Be safe at home. Thank you.